All right, welcome to my Patreon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, they're gonna crash the economy and there's gonna be a war, and it looks like it's gonna be with China. Now, I'm about to call Florbrun because I wanna go over this headline with her, and she's got a spiel about China, and I think she's right. So I'm gonna call her on speaker and talk to her about it because she's researched this a lot more than me.
Hey there.
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm recording right now for Patreon,
Okay.
and I wanted to pick your brain for a couple minutes.
Sure.
Have you seen this China stuff in the news today?
There's something new?
Yeah.
Refresh me. I may have or may have not. I haven't seen anything new yet.
All right.
The fish?
The Chinese media is accusing the U.S. of hoping to start a war between China and India, or China and Japan. And Trump just came out today and he's restricting Chinese media outlets. He's deemed them propaganda.
Oh.
I wanted my people to hear your spiel about China.
Okay. Well, I think I've kind of talked to you about this before when I did a show over a year ago talking about the resurgence of an actual Red Dawn, which is a movie that was created. It was many years ago. It was the 80s version, then futuristically there was another version later on that was created talking about there being an inside war with, I think it was Korea at the time. There was Asiatics, people from Asia, who who came on land and created the World War III in the United States, and Russia. I think it was the second. I don't know if the second version was the Russia but it was Russia and China.
Yeah.
Okay? So my take on it is, and I've always said this, when I realized that in Mexico, one of the reasons that the president was trying so desperately to create a wall was more than just Mexicans coming in. It had to do with a large percentage of Asiatics that were noted to be Chinese that were on the Mexican border, who, because the Chinese and the Mexicans have some of the same Mongolian genomes, they look very similar unless you hear them talk.
Yeah.
And a couple of our people had noted that over on the Tijuana side, there was so many Chinese that it was so startling. And then we got intel later that there were truckloads of people coming in via some of those borders, those open parts of the borders, whether it's a tunneling system or making it through the cracks, and they were Chinese. Now, fast forward, we know that there has been the notion that the Chinese have been buying properties and companies in the States for over 20 years. They have been slowly, but it's been happening more readily over the last, I would say, over the last 5 to 6 years, it's been doubling. And we also denoted that, them buying, I think it was the Tyson, I don't know if it's Purdue or Tyson company, some of the meat companies, the industry, the pork industry, I forgot which one it was. It was one of the pork industry companies, and another one was a chicken. They were buying up all those companies in order to keep those resources for themselves. That's why they were pushing for all the veganism and vegetarianism, because they were going to make sure that all those meat resources were only going to be designated to those Asian compadres that are here in the States. So my theory is they're here. They've bought up most of the United States. I've talked about the fact that from what I've heard from intel over the years is that they bought the majority of the states, with the exception of California and Hawaii. And Hawaii I think is understandable because there's a lot of Japanese in Hawaii rather than Chinese.
Yeah.
And because of that, they would have to give the public a public theatrical scene of why they've lost the country to others. So I personally think that the war on the border, I think I sent that to you. A friend of mine sent me intel that the war on the border between India and China just got more tense because they need that last border in order to infiltrate. They need that port in order to do the last stage of the infiltration into the States fully. They took over the ports in Jamaica. A lot of our island people denoted that they took over the ports in Jamaica. If you do know, I think it was 6 to 7 months ago, Russian boats, big, huge boats and some aircrafts were seen and witnessed going to Cuba bringing over something.
Yeah.
And do know why the destabilization in Venezuela was more than just them the United States trying to take over Venezuela's resources. It had more to do with the fact that the Chinese and Russia had a lot of stake in there, and it was one other direction that they could infiltrate us on that side in South America. So my theory is everything was purposefully being set up to inevitably take over the states and create a mock situation where they already took over financially and corporate-wise.
Yeah.
All they need to do is orchestrate a theatrical occurrence of war. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to see it. I see military people in Orlando.
Have you heard of China's Operation Bedbugs? Have you heard of that?
No.
Okay, well, check it out. China, about 10 years ago, started a government program called Operation Bedbugs, okay? And what they did is the goal was to buy key properties around the world and erect hotels. I'm looking at a map right now of the Chinese-owned properties, just the hotels. Now, they own much more than just hotel property in the U.S. But I'm talking about every state. I mean, it's every 100 miles across the U.S., they own not only property, but hotels. I mean, I'll have to send you a link to this map. You'll be shocked when you see it. You'll be shocked how much they own.
No, I'm not shocked. You know why? Because when I started to see the dissemination of Chinese all over Orlando, I said to myself, where are they coming from? That makes more sense to me because that means they're hosting people without anyone noticing. You would notice if they were in houses, apartments, because other people could witness that. But you wouldn't notice if you had a plane full of Chinese and they were staying in a hotel that was only manned by Chinese, and there wasn't anybody to witness that there is a plethora of these people in the country.
Yeah, and listen, they're going to. Well, I believe the stock market's already crashed. They've injected.
It has been
over
for money. So
they've injected over 50 trillion to keep people from seeing what's happened.
I saw it.
Yeah, dude, it's something insane. It's like it's 200 billion a night they're injecting right now, every night.
That's artificial. That's artificial inflation. That means when it crashed, that means economies crash. It's totally crashed. That elevation is going to show up around November or December.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking, what do? Every time they crash the economy, they have a big war to get all the money back. And
They do.
Dude, and I think they're going to use China. So I'm watching everything in the news about China really, really closely.
Good. Watch Russia too. Make sure, remember, they're friends. They're very close, and they do business together. And remember that border. Remember how people share borders is how sometimes they have relations.
Yeah.
So remember, Mongolian border is right there in Russia, and they're very close.
And Venezuela too. They're in Venezuela.
Oh yeah, that's why Venezuela was keynote. Why that whole fiasco and why it's still having issues is because of that. Because the Russians and the Chinese were trying to secure the South American border. Remember, they surrounded us. Remember, every country is surrounded. They have Cuba, they have Venezuela, and obviously they have places in Africa. It doesn't really bother us there, but they have the coast, and then they have an infiltration of hotels, which probably have thousands. I'm telling you, thousands of Chinese in there that we don't know about.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, all right. Well, thank you for talking to me. I'm gonna continue this stream. I appreciate you.
Okay, take care. Bye.
All right, have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, that was Floorburn, you guys. Dude, she's researched the China Red Dawn scenario more than anybody else. She's got some great videos on her YouTube channel about it. But listen, I just blew up this map and scrolling through it, these are just Chinese-owned hotels. I saw a map which I was looking for and couldn't find, and China owns over 25% of the U.S. property. So look for China and the U.S. to get into it. If China and the U.S. get into it, it'll be a perfect excuse for them to be here. That's what she was saying. All the property they own, That's a perfect excuse to have a war and America lose, so that now you understand why all these Chinese people are here. Well, we had a war and we lost. I think they have decided, the elite, that America has to be destroyed. The freedoms that we do have, they have to be taken away, because as long as America remains sovereign, there's not going to be a one world government. America has to fall. They've taken weapons rights away from the whole world for the most part, except for Americans. We're next. We're losing our freedom next. I guarantee it. They're going to crash the economy. They're going to have a big war, and the U.S. is going to be on the losing side. And I think it's all been pre-planned. But let's move on. Some other interesting stories I came across today. Trump says he's authorized federal arrests for vandalizing statues, says up to 10 years in prison. So I'm curious to see how that turns out, if they actually start arresting people. A lot of these people that were out protesting, they might be in a lot of trouble. I saw the one woman who burned down, what was it, a Wendy's? They identified her. They're arresting her for arson. I don't think they've picked her up yet at the moment, but she's been charged. All these people that were out destroying stuff, a lot of them are going to go to jail. If they were on camera, if they can be identified, they're going to go to jail. They thought that it was all good to destroy the country and there'd be no repercussions. Next, Trump says any DC autonomous zone will be met with serious force. The threat came after tense demonstrations on Monday night, where protesters attempted to topple a statue of President Jackson in Lafayette Square across the street from the White House. Law enforcement intervened, deploying pepper spray and using force to disperse the protests before the statue was pulled down. The Washington Post reported that the letters BHAZ were spray painted on the columns of St. John's Church in the park and on a piece of plywood, an acronym for Black House Autonomous Zone. The phrase appeared to be taken after the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, also known as the Capitol Hill Occupied Protest in Seattle, that was established earlier this month. So Trump came out on Twitter and said no way will he allow that in his backyard. They're going to meet him with full force if they do try to do that. I really hope they don't, because if they take another place in this country over, I think we all know what that means. There's going to be a domino effect everywhere, and it's going to be urban combat in the street if you're not with them. But here's a piece of good news. Seattle mayor says police will return to abandoned police station in the protest zone. If you don't know, the autonomous zone, there's been 2 or 3 shootings in the past week, and police had trouble responding because of mobs of people. So the Seattle mayor is now saying things have changed, it's became dangerous, and they're taking it back. And they said they're going to take it back non-violently, but it's going to be dismantled. Now, that rapper Raz that was leading the group in that autonomous zone, if I don't see him brought up on federal charges, I think that means he was working for the government and was offered immunity. And saying this is one thing that gets videos pulled down from YouTube immediately, even when other people have me on their YouTube, such as Just Face It YouTube channel. When I say that autonomous zone, the government's hired agents to run it, or gave people deals for immunity to go in there and run it, the videos get yanked pretty quick. So look for that. If you don't see that rapper Raz arrested and brought up on federal charges, dude, he was videotaped handing out assault rifles from the trunk of his car to random people in the autonomous zone. Now, if they don't have him in the federal penitentiary, then that means he's a deep state operative working for the government. But anyway, I'm glad we got to talk to Floorburn. I just wanted to go over some of the news topics from today. I definitely believe, expect to see a war by November, by Christmas at the latest. Expect internet down, grid down, reset in full swing. Keep prepping, keep preparing, because I'm telling you, this is only the beginning of what's going down. I love you guys very much.
Jonxarmy signing out from the belly of the beast.